Welcome to EPG Padasala. I am V. Selvakumar, working in the Department of Maritime History and Marine Archaeology, Tamil University, Tanjavur. Today, we are going to look into the lesson on formation process and archaeological record and also the need for excavation. This is part of the subject of Indian culture. Under this, there is a paper, Principles and Methods of Archaeology. So, we are going to look into the importance of formation process of archaeological record and the need for excavations. Before going into this lesson, we need to understand what is an archaeological excavation. Archaeological excavation is a systematic documentation of archaeological remains that are buried under the subsurface, that are below the surface. So we need to know why we need to excavate at a particular site. Why we have to excavate? Why can't we do the same job just by exploration? The next important question is, how can we interpret the material that are coming from an archaeological site? How will we understand the bits and pieces of pottery, bones and tools and debitage that are spread all across the site? How will we interpret them? They are from a static context. How will we understand the people behind these artifacts? The purpose of archaeology is not just to collect artifacts or document things that are lying. The main purpose is to understand the behavior of the human beings who are behind these artifacts. If we really want to understand the people behind the artifacts, we need to know about formation process. That is why we are going into this particular aspect of this module. Introducing the need for archaeological excavation is one of the learning objectives of this particular lesson. Understanding the formation process of archaeological record is another important objective here. Knowing the natural formation processes and comprehending the cultural formation processes. How all these formation processes are contributing to the archaeological site. That is our goal today. Archaeological excavation is a systematic process of digging of natural and cultural layers to document, understand and recover the material remains, ecofacts, and to collect information on their context. Context is very important in archaeology. Without understanding the context, we can't interpret the objects. This is in order to understand the past human behavior and the cultures on the whole. So our understanding has to be holistic. Our target is the human behavior. So let us look into what is the need for excavation. What are all the factors that contribute to the initiation of an archaeological excavation? The main purpose of archaeological excavation is to understand the past cultures. Several factors may be behind the excavation at a specific site. The archaeological data from the surfaces could be collected through surface survey. The data from the surface alone cannot be used and is not enough for understanding the temporal aspects of cultures from a holistic perspective. Therefore, we need to excavate. Without excavating, we cannot understand the archaeological record in total. Without excavation, the knowledge we have would be only fragmentary. Any attempt to exclusively rely upon on the surface data could be fragmentary in approach. If we depend only on the surface data, our data will not be complete. It will be fragmentary in approach. Therefore, archaeological excavations are inevitable for a complete and proper understanding of the past cultures. Archaeological excavations provide relatively well-preserved materials and context of ancient communities that are buried, or that the remains of them are buried than those from the surface context. So on the surface we get only few materials, only the buried materials give us an accurate account of what happened in the past. Archaeological materials from the surfaces may be contaminated by the disturbances caused by the various factors, both natural as well as cultural. So the surface data may not be pristine. It may have been moved, or it may have been shifted, or it may be disturbed. While the sealed deposits found in archaeological sites might be less contaminated in some instances. At least in some instances, these data might be better preserved and not contaminated, and may be less disturbed when compared to the surface finds. Overall, the buried deposits may be relatively better preserved than the surface material. That is why we need to excavate. To understand the archaeology of a particular region, excavation is very essential. The long sequences of cultures could be established only with the evidence from the excavation. When we excavate, we understand different cultural periods. By surface observation, we may not be able to get all the information. The cultural history or sequence may be represented in the buried deposits found across several sites on the landscape. Sometimes we cannot get the entire cultural history just by excavating one site. There may be bits and fragments of the cultural sequences across several sites in a particular region. Therefore, we may have to excavate several sites in a particular region. Therefore, excavations are required at multiple sites for understanding the regional perspectives of archaeological culture. The regional perspective is very important. Just by excavating one archaeological site, we are not going to get a complete picture. We may have to combine this with surface survey and excavation at several sites to get a complete picture. Apart from offering new data and cultural sequences, the excavated data may also help to understand the data from surface context. Sometimes we get data from surface context which may not be belonging to any specific activity area or any specific cultural context. But when we excavate, we may be able to interpret the surface materials with the help of materials from properly secured stratified context from excavated sites. That is why excavation is very important. The data from surfaces could be securely placed in a specific context based on the data from stratified context from the excavated sites. Sometimes the excavations may be conducted to preserve an archaeological site that faces destruction due to developmental activity. Sometimes excavations are conducted just for the sake of recovery and preservation. A site may be just excavated out of pressures from the public as well as government. Sometimes a site has to be excavated within a short period of time because the people want to do some kind of construction or the government wants to undertake some project. So we have to undertake excavations under different circumstances. The circumstances that lead to an archaeological excavation is not same in all the cases. Each excavation is different. The need for excavation sometimes may arise from the necessity of preserving the archaeological site. Archaeological sites may be affected by developmental activities such as road construction, dam construction, and industrial development. Therefore, excavation is an inevitable method for collecting data on ancient society. A regional archaeological study cannot be complete without the excavation. Therefore, excavation is the most important part of archaeological archaeological research to get a comprehensive understanding of the past cultures. So without excavation, we will be nowhere closer to the behavioral pattern of the past communities. Now we have excavated a site, we have explored several sites as part of surface survey, we have so much archaeological data accumulated with us. Now, how are we going to interpret? Can we take all the data that we have with us, all the bits and fragments of pottery, as well as other materials, broken structures, dilapidated ruins, can we directly take them to the face value? How can we interpret about the past culture? This is where another important concept or framework comes into archaeological research and theory. This is what called formation process of archaeological record. The name itself is very clear about what it is. It is actually how an archaeological site is formed. So it is not an easy thing to understand that archaeological site is formed over a day or two. It is a complex process. That is why it has the term process. It is not done by one individual or two individual, one factor or two factor. Number of complex factors that are acting upon the world are also acting upon the archaeological record, and they contribute to the formation of the archaeological record. Let's look into the formation process in more detail now. Formation process may sound as a complex term or a jargon. It may be scary, but it is a very simple concept. Archaeological sites, artifacts, and material culture cannot be taken to the face value. Collection of data is not the objective of research. As I already mentioned, more than the artifacts and sites, the processes, events, and human behavior behind these artifacts are important. We cannot understand the data, that is the artifacts and their context, without understanding the cultural processes that produced the data. Therefore, formation process is very important in archaeological research. Several dynamic processes are involved in the production of artifacts and their context, use and discard, and final abandonment till they are excavated by the archaeologists. The study of formation processes seeks to understand the dynamic processes behind the artifacts and material culture. Site formation processes is the study of processes that are involved in the formation of an archaeological site or record. It studies how artifacts were produced, used, and discarded, how they were affected by various cultural, natural processes till the moment of the excavation and recovery by the archaeologists. Till archaeologists go to a site and excavate, numerous processes are causing to the formation of the archaeological site. When we visit the site on the surface, we may not be able to understand. But when we excavate and handle the object, see them, we can very well realize that these artifacts are not just coming out of the storage or any other fresh context. They have undergone tremendous change over hundreds and thousands of years, and they are being excavated. Now, the very challenge for archaeologists is to interpret the human behavior just by looking at, just by measuring, just by analyzing these materials. They have to reconstruct the entire behavioral history and the entire culture. That is where the challenge. These factors compelled several early archaeologists to think critically to understand the artifacts and their context. That is how formation process of archaeological record emerged. The formation process of archaeological record developed due to the new archaeology that emerged in the 1960s. New archaeology is an important development in archaeological history, especially theoretical history. It sought to critically question all kinds of interpretations, conclusions. It insisted that there should be problem-oriented research in archaeology. We should be scientific in our approach. Formation, it also helped people to raise questions, and it forced archaeologists to think about the formation process. It stressed that formation process is important in the interpretation of human behavior. Without understanding the formation processes, we cannot interpret the human behavior just by looking at the artifacts. Michael Brian Schiffer is one of the important archaeologists who developed the concept of formation processes of archaeological record. Although this concept was new, even earlier researchers had this idea about the formation processes right from early stage. But new archaeology gave a very concrete and a good theoretical framework. Michael Brian Schiffer developed this concept of systemic and archaeological context. Systemic context is the live cultural context. Archaeological context is the buried sedimentary context where our material culture is buried below the surface. In a sense, the buried sites are like static, while the living culture is very dynamic. Louis R. Binford, another important theoretician who was behind this development of new archaeology, he also contributed to the study of formation processes. The same systemic and archaeological contexts are used in his term as static and dynamic context. He developed this middle range theory which seeks to correlate the statics of the archaeological record and the dynamics of the cultural system. He used ethnoarchaeological studies for developing this middle range theory and to understand cultural context in a meaningful manner. So these two people were very important in the development of formation processes of archaeological studies. Earlier researchers who were looking at the patterns of artifacts that are found in an archaeological site, and they were trying to interpret the human behavior. Later on, after several critical analysis by the archaeologists, they realized we can't take the pattern that we are encountering in an excavation to their face value. They are not located in a very pristine condition right from the prehistoric or even later historic time. So many factors have influenced their size, dimension, as well as their position. Therefore, we need to understand their condition before we interpret. Even many archaeological students, they think that once they excavate, they get a very accurate and very pure uncontaminated data. This can be demonstrated by an example. Whatever evidence that you get from the site cannot be directly used for interpretation. You need to critically ask several questions. You need to understand the context. Let's say there is a family living in an area. This family does not eat non-vegetarian food, like say fish or chicken or any other meat. What happens is, in a particular area there are so many dogs or crows or other animals. They have the habit of carrying these bones and other materials to all parts of a village. Let's say these animals come and deposit chicken bone or animal bone or fish bone in the house premises of a family who does not eat any non-vegetarian item. Let's say if an archaeologist after some time goes and excavate, finds all these bones and simply interprets the residences of this particular premise, they were eating all kinds of meat. So it will be a wrong interpretation. This is where we need to critically question, look at the artifacts, look at the bones and see if there is a gnawing mark of animal left on them. We has to check, he or she, the archaeologist who is excavating the site has to check whether these bones were deposited by the residents or they were brought from elsewhere. By this example, you will very well understand that how formation process study is important in archaeology. So you will realize when you excavate two materials together in association, you cannot take for granted that were there from the prehistoric time and these two materials are lying there because of the people's behavior. It could be an accident, it could be some other flood or other factor leading to the association at this particular site. So early archaeologists were perturbed by these issues and they started thinking seriously, trying to question, trying to look at the material very critically. Out of these efforts only developed the study of formation processes. Several researchers, apart from Louis R. Binford and Michael Brian Schiffer, have contributed to this particular research branch within archaeology. I am not going to list all the names, but some of the names we can see here. Michael Petraglia, Goldberg, Kona, and LaMotta, Schiffer, Maguire, Reid, and Tani. There are several other researchers who have contributed to the development of this site formation process of archaeology. Even within India, we have several researchers. In fact, Robert Bruce Foote, who reported the first Paleolithic tool in near Chennai at Pallavaram in 1863, had some good understanding of the formation process. Though he was living in a different age, he had very clear awareness about the natural factors that were causing disturbance to the archaeological materials. Then later on, Professor Pradaya, Ravi Korisetter, Mike Petraglia, S.N. Rajaguru, Richard Jaldial, Sheila Mishra, Shanti Papu, and several other researchers have worked on the study of formation processes in India. Generally, the study of formation processes is applied to the prehistoric context. But it can very well apply to the historical context also, that can help to understand the archaeological materials more thoroughly and to make meaningful interpretation. The patterns at a site are caused by number of factors other than human behavior. See, if we see a pattern of distribution of artifacts, we cannot immediately assume that prehistoric or other human cultures caused this pattern. The study of formation processes seek to understand these dynamic processes. These dynamic processes may not be visible directly. So we have to deduce on the basis of the evidence that we are encountering. The patterns created by other agencies, for example, non-human and later human agencies, have to be identified before the final interpretation on the past human behavior. This is very important. Simply, you have a pattern created at a site. This pattern is created by the original inhabitants of a site. Then it has been modified by later people, animal. So theoretically, you have original pattern created by the people, X, and then say later on all the patterns, that let's say Y, X minus Y, and then you get the result. So you have to identify these factors that contributed later on to the original pattern. If you can detect these later patterns, you get the original pattern. So that is the theory behind, or simple calculation behind, the study of formation processes. What is formation processes? What these scholars have to say on this? Let's look into it. According to M.B. Schiffer, the factors that create historical and archaeological records are formation processes. They are basically the factors like natural and cultural. Schiffer argues that formation process of the archaeological record embodies a vision that the cultural past is knowable, but only when the nature of the evidence is thoroughly understood. you should look here and read carefully. We have to understand the nature of the evidence very thoroughly. Only then we can make meaningful interpretation. It shows how the past is accessible in practice by identifying variability introduced by the diverse effects of people and nature that are in some form of the archaeological record. So we have to understand the diverse variability introduced by other agency. When we deal with the site formation processes, we have to understand several terms and terminologies. Again, as I said, context is something very important. There are two important contexts that we need to understand. One is systemic, other is archaeological. What is systemic context? Systemic context is actually a cultural context, a system in which an artifact participates during its lifetime. Actually, if you look at the world is filled with several objects. We can simply classify them into ecofacts and artifacts, the natural world and the artifacts that are produced by human beings. So we are actually interacting with the artifacts, we live with artifacts. We no longer in the modern world live with the natural world. We deal with car and pen and pencil, computer, building. So many material artifacts are there. As long as we are using them, they are part of that, they are in the systemic context. The moment we dump them or discard them, they reach the refuse pit or corporation garbage ground, they go out of the systemic context. So systemic context is the live cultural context. Archaeological context is the context in which we find these material, they are excavated by archaeologists. Actually, Brian Schiffer, he developed this important concept to understand the difference between live context and archaeological context. This is very important for archaeological interpretation. What is systemic context? Already I mentioned it is a live cultural context. Again, what happens in the systemic context? Michael Brian Schiffer suggests that 5 stages in the systemic context: procurement, manufacture, use and maintenance and discard. Any kind of material that we use, they are passing through these stages. We procure means acquire the raw material. We collect clay from the site. We manufacture a pot. Then the pot is sold by a potter. Somebody buys it. Then it is being used in various contexts. We use it for wedding, we use it for death, and then we are maintaining it. The pot breaks up or there is a crack. Sometimes people apply some cement over it and use. Finally, they realize it cannot be used, it is discarded. The same thing is for whether it is a small pot or even for computer. This is the same. Material is procured and then it is manufactured, used and then maintained and then discarded. These are the components in the life cycle of any object, say from rocket down to a small pin that we use for as a clip in the paper. Like discard is the end of a life of an artifact. After discard, the artifact reaches an archaeological context. Again, there is another component. Once an artifact reaches an archaeological context, it may again come to a systemic context. For example, archaeologists and other people, local people, they collect coin. A coin which was lost or which was discarded, being again collected and then it is sold in the market. Again, it comes to a live context. Say, people find an image of a Shivalinga or image of a deity and they dig a well and they are finding it. Again, they keep it in the temple. So, an object which was in the live context, by accidentally it was dumped in a river or it was dumped in a well and then it is buried, then again it was taken away and then kept in the temple. So, here you can see an object moves from systemic context to archaeological context, then again archaeological context, it comes to systemic context. Again, archaeologists also create many situations. We excavate a site and collect objects, keep in a museum. Again, in the museum, they are again in a live context, which they are being enjoyed by tourists, children and everybody. So you can see how things are moving all around. Then coming to the point of discard or refuse, Schiffer again does some more classification. He talks about primary refuse context and then secondary refuse context. This is also very important. We find an object where it was actually manufactured and used, then it is called primary refuse context. Sometimes people may take this object and dump it elsewhere in a faraway region, then it is in a secondary refuse context. So this is very important. We need to understand that if we find an object in a place, it doesn't mean that it was left there by the people. It could have been carried away by some other forces. So we need to understand the context of an artifact. That is why context becomes a very important question in archaeological research. Then another important concept here is dimensions of variability. This is also presented by McElbrien Schiffer. What are the factors that affect an artifacts? Archaeological material exhibit variability in 4 dimensions according to M.V. Schiffer. They are formal dimension, spatial dimension, frequency dimension and relational dimension. Formal dimension actually deals with the physiochemical characteristics of the artifacts. That means shape, size, weight, color and hardness. So a site formation process can affect an object's shape, size, weight, color and hardness. That is the physical property of the object itself. Next comes spatial dimension. Any object in this world has to exist on space. Similarly, an artifact has to be found in a place. It has to rest on a place. There can be changes in the place itself. It relates to the specific location of the object. Then frequency, number of occurrence, how many potsherds we are finding in a place. If you are finding 100 potsherds, if you are finding 2 potsherds, they can convey, this information can convey some meanings. It can be used for interpretation. This is what we call frequency dimension. Then third is relational dimension, which relates to the association and co-occurrence of artifacts. How these 2 things are occurring together. So we need to understand this also. Suppose if we have a bottle in a place, its lid has to be somewhere else. So this bottle and lid, they are very much associated. Similarly, sometimes we get associated materials. Sometimes we may find one thing and then you may find another thing. So that is also very important. Another important concept here in formation process is the transformation process. Sometimes the things, almost all the times, the objects and the other things that are deposited in a place are transformed. For the transformation of these things, several factors cause, and there are 2 main transforms which are classified by Schiffer. One is cultural process as C transform, another is natural process as N transform. Cultural process are human made, natural processes are non-human made. So when we talk about N transform, natural transforms, it could be environmental factor such as weather, rainfall, ice, heat, humidity, floods and sediments and their chemical properties, plants, animals and so many other natural factors. Non-human agencies and other natural factors and environment that affect the archaeological record, they are N transforms or natural processes. There is also gravity and then bioturbation, the disturbances caused by so many other animals. They also influence the formation of archaeological record. They also come under natural formation processes. Another important factor is the cultural formation processes, where the cultural agencies themselves contribute to the formation process. That is the main agency, because an artifact or other materials in a site are created by a culture. The culture itself transforms that. So we need to understand this before going into the natural formation processes. According to Schiffer, there are 4 different processes involved in the cultural formation processes. He describes them as systemic to archaeological processes or archaeological context, archaeological to systemic context, archaeological to archaeological context, systemic to systemic context. The first is he calls cultural deposition, where systemic to archaeological, life system to archaeological context, which is deposition. We call archaeological record as deposits, and then archaeological to systematic context. Sometimes people take material from archaeological context and then comes to systemic context. He calls this as reclamation process. Again, archaeological to archaeological context. Sometimes sites are disturbed and materials are moved. Again, things are in the archaeological context, but it goes from one to another. So let us look into these 4 processes in detail now. Systemic to archaeological context is actually cultural deposition. How an object reaches an archaeological record? Normally, either the object has to be abandoned or discarded. So discarding is a very important factor here. This is, again, as already we discussed, it is classified into primary refuse, secondary refuse, maintenance process. Primary refuse, suppose if we kill an animal and leave the bones at the site itself, it is in primary context. Let's say somebody kills an animal and leaves the bones there, but what happens? A dog carries the bones and deposits in somebody's house in 100 meter away, then it is not in primary context. It is in secondary context, and the agency involved is natural agency, that is the dog. Secondary refuse, sometime whatever people dump in that area, this is being taken away from the activity and then they are deposited. It is in secondary context. So we cannot assume just because these potsherd or material are there, the activity took place here. The objects are lying here, activity took place elsewhere. Third is maintenance process, site maintenance behavior. Normally, when people undertake any kind of activities, they will not dump all the materials there only. You know why? When they want to produce an artifact, if they are working in the spot, if they discard all the debitage or waste, it will disturb their activities. So naturally, they have to maintain the site. That practice probably developed in the Neolithic period when people started using a place continuously. So what they did was they cleared that area after undertaking a particular work. Then they collected all the artifacts dumped elsewhere. So when we get materials, say, piled up after 3 days, 4 days or 5 days, we may not get a very accurate pattern. So first we have to understand this before going for an interpretation. This is very important concept. Sometimes materials reach a context because of loss. How do you find an object in a particular place? People drop it, people lose it. Suppose if you find any valuable object in an archaeological excavation, sometimes we get coins, sometimes we get gold, and they are probably lost. People, what happens? Even if we lose a small coin, we search and then we leave it like that. Similarly, in the ancient time, people sometimes lost things that became part of archaeological record. Another important thing is ritual cache. That means people bury certain precious objects as a part of ritual. Sometimes people may bury 1 coin or 2 coin as part of belief, saying that this is ritual, this is offering to the god, we shouldn't do anything to that. Similarly, disposal and treatment of the dead. The dead people were buried and then they are keeping so many objects. We can take the example of the megalithic burials, within which we get a number of remains or grave goods which are in complete position. So these kind of ritual burials normally provide complete objects which we may not be able to find in archaeological context. The next important process in the cultural formation process is archaeological to systemic context. It is reclamation process. Archaeological to systemic context. Here, sometimes people reuse artifacts from earlier contexts. Even today, people have a tendency to reuse any kind of object, any material is considered a wealth. Suppose we have a brick from an old building in the neighborhood, people always find a use for it. Suppose people have a old broken part, even that is used in the rural areas. Sometimes the rim or neck of a broken part is used as a ring stand in some of the villages. You can very well understand that people don't just discard the thing. Sometimes they take materials from the old sites and then reuse them. Sometimes people also reoccupy the old site. People go and settle in an archaeological site. We can also find people remove bricks from the old building and use them for a new construction. This happens around many of the archaeological sites. Another important aspect is scavenging. People go and collect lot of materials from the archaeological sites and then again they are using them for various purposes. They collect coins. If they find any valuable metal or other precious stone, then again they reuse it. So you have these things happening. Here, archaeological material again comes to a cultural context. Next is archaeological to archaeological context. This is again a disturbance process. Here, a material in an archaeological site is disturbed by a process and then it goes to another context. For example, earth moving processes. People may use earth mover and level an archaeological site. They may disturb as a surface context. People may walk along the surface. They may dig a pit and plant a coconut. Government may construct a dam there. And animal and human trampling. Animals may move in an area and they may trample and crush the site, and people may plow land for agriculture. So these are the disturbances caused by these factors. Next important context is systemic to systemic context. Here again reuse processes is involved where we see lateral recycling of artifacts. People circulate objects and artifact among various social groups. Sometimes an artifact is also reused. Suppose if we find a gold from an archaeological site or from a living context, that we go and reuse. And then there is this concept of secondary use. Any new use without the need to be modifying the old object. Sometimes people use the old object for some other process. Next is non-cultural formation process. A non-cultural formation process, as we already saw, involves several natural agencies, they like natural factors as well as animals. What you see in this particular image is a boat found in the site of Valley Historic Site of Kerala. Here you get a well-preserved wooden remain. Here, because of the good wet waterlogged condition, the boat is entirely preserved. This is what we see here. This is a best example of non-cultural formation process causing to the preservation of a archaeological site. So, non-cultural formation process includes all the processes and natural environment that impinge upon artifacts and archaeological deposits. A non-cultural formation process have four basic characteristics: the nature of the process, the duration of the process, and the additive and subtractive effects of the process, and the scale or effects. So all these factors influence the formation of archaeological record. At the artifact level, chemical, physical, and biological processes influence the artifact and its nature. So it influences differently on different materials. At the local and site level, several factors are disturbing these archaeological record. They are called pedoturbation. We have evidence of faunal turbation caused by animals, floral turbation caused by plant and roots. Like that, we have several factors like freezing, slope wash, swelling, gas and wind, water seepage, all of them causing disturbance to the archaeological site. So again, we have regional scale processes under which we have earthquakes, storms and tsunamis and climatic condition, volcanic and hydrological processes. And then we can see the traces of all these formation processes on the artifacts. So when we carefully look at the artifacts, we can understand if they are in fresh condition or rolled conditions. So by observing the artifacts, we can understand if they are really disturbed by natural formation processes. Even their orientation and position are also disturbed by the archaeological, especially the natural formation processes. Again, we get also damage traces on the artifacts, bones and stones and glass and ceramics and other materials. In the case of bones, we get patina, and also we get patina on stones. Sometimes animal evidence, animal gnawing is also found on the objects. So by critically looking at the objects, we can identify whether it has been disturbed by formation processes. Then quantity of the artifacts, sometimes we get large quantity, sometimes we get small quantity. The quantity also can tell a lot about the artifacts, the size of the artifacts. If we get a pile of artifacts, we can say it could have been caused by some specific activity. We can understand this. Sometimes sorting of the artifact also is done by the flood or other factors. The variety of artifacts and their density also can convey a lot of things. Again, refitting of the artifacts, including pottery and lithics, can tell about the formation processes. And the sediment properties, then the color, patterning, texture and composition of the sediments, and the presence of insects and other pollen, phytoliths, they can also help us to understand the formation processes. Again, geochemical components of the sediments, they also influence the archaeological sediment, like soil pH, moisture, temperatures. They can also tell a lot about the nature of the formation process in the particular site. Then we have flow zone. Flow zone is another important area of research. Scholars undertake research in the flow zone to understand how objects have moved, how materials have been displaced by frequent use of flowing activity. This branch is called flow zone archaeology. Several experimental studies have also been done in this area. Finally, we will come to the summary. As we already saw, formation process involves with the factors that create historical and archaeological records. And if we want to interpret the archaeological evidence, we have to understand how the evidence was formed, how it reached the archaeological site. Formation process is a scientific approach to the interpretation of the past human behavior and artifacts and its manufacturing process and its use, reuse, discard and its transformation by cultural and natural formation processes are thoroughly studied under the formation processes for a meaningful interpretation of the past. The artifacts may be considered to have 4 dimensions of variability: formal, spatial, frequency, and relational. They are all influenced by the formation process. Natural and cultural factors greatly affect the formation of archaeological records. They are known as N-transform and C-transform. Earth science, geoarchaeological studies, flow zone archaeology, experimental archaeology, ethnographic and ethnoarchaeological investigation are all part of understanding the formation processes. Formation process studies offer an excellent framework for understanding the archaeological record. Formation process studies have different focus depending upon the researchers and their theoretical orientations, while behavioral archaeologists focus on the search for behavioral laws among other concerns. The geoarchaeologists focus on the search for processes of formation associated with the archaeological record. I hope you understood many of the concepts related to the formation process. If you have more queries or doubts, you can consult the e-text or kindly log on to EPG Pathshala. Thank you.